Good evening. My name is Matt Lawless, and I serve as Scottsville's Town Administrator. You're now viewing the recording and meeting stream for the Town of Scottsville's Planning Commission meeting, regular schedule, Monday, March the 7th, 2022. This meeting is held in compliance with the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, the state's open meeting laws, and the Town of Scottsville's ordinance on the continuity of government during the COVID-19 emergency. Under that framework, we have several opportunities for the public to participate and view this meeting, and everyone is welcome. The meeting is held physically at the Town Hall, 401 Valley Street, posted and open to the public. We also have opportunities to participate remotely by telephone, calling in, and online through our Zoom platform. Our Planning Commission members may join us in both formats, and the public can do so as well. The meeting agenda includes a couple of public hearings duly advertised where everyone will have the opportunity to speak. If you're viewing this meeting in the future on our YouTube channel, thank you very much. The local time here now is 12 minutes until 7 o'clock, which is the posted start time for the meeting. We're still assembling our quorum and getting our room set up. So if you want to skip ahead on your video 11 minutes, that'll be 7 o'clock and you'll see the meeting come to order. Thank you very much.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was able to Zoom this meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to do that if that's okay.
You're all set. Sure.
Thanks, sweetie.
Yep. right, thank you. All set.
Roll.
Yes, especially fire. Molly Angelini.
Here.
Lisa Caltabiano.
Here.
Matthew Johnson.
Here.
Dan Briscoe.
Here.
Shannon Strassner. Yes. Ms. Schuster, can you hear us?
Shannon? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Excellent. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
All right, very good. Agenda, 1 point to make on this, item 6A, Kelsey Schlein will be appearing on that, but might be a little after 8 PM. So she asked us to push that back on the agenda a little bit. So, okay, good, thank you. Do I have a motion for this agenda?
I move that we accept the agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Meeting minutes from February 7th.
I motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 7th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gritzko, can you please give us a report about recent relevant town council actions?
The main issue we will be talking about in the near future, as you all know, is the ongoing SUP discussion for Bird Street. And we are going to be having our vote in the public session in this month. I'm optimistic that we will pass it. I'm thankful for the work that the Planning Commission has done. It's no secret that it's a big debate in the town at the moment as we continue to talk it through, but I would say that's the most relevant thing. But I think I would say again, thank you for the work that you all did on that issue. Madam Chair.
Are you moving forward with a vote on Blenheim, or is that going to be tabled? Was the decision made on that?
We are not moving forward with a vote on it. Matt, what's the appropriate way to say what's happening with Blenheim?
The applicant withdrew the Blenheim application. They have the right to do that at any point in the process. They heard the input from the public and the council about their small application being premature, and council and the community's preference to see a larger plan for the whole 50 to 100 acre site. So they took that feedback to heart and may commence to work on that, but there's no rush on it. And so it's only the Bird Street one that's before town council.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. Matters not on the agenda from the public? Okay, thank you. Old business, special use permit application for 474 Valley Street and 496 Valley Street. We have a public hearing scheduled, and I'd like to begin that public hearing in just a moment. There doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of discussion about it. And at a certain point, I'll close the public hearing and then commissioners can discuss. All right. let us open up this public hearing now, 474 Valley Street and 496 Valley Street. Can we do them both at the same time? Let's do that, okay? Anyone from the public here to speak on that?
Would you like to introduce and speak to?
Sure, my name is Carmel Beer, I'm sorry, or do I?
Yeah, I don't need mine.
I'm sorry, I haven't done this before here.
No worries.
So, my name is Carmel Beer and I'm the contract purchaser. And I believe I presented last meeting, so I'm happy to go through things again, or I'm happy to just answer questions if there are any questions.
I was intrigued, just to say, when you spoke, being supportive of your request, but just that you were interested in the town of Scottsville. And I thought your presentation was helpful because we as the town are always looking for those who are excited to come and be a part of the town. So I just thought it was very encouraging to hear what you had to share, besides the details of the plan itself.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm in love with Scottsville. I'm a huge fan here, so.
So are many of us.
I mean, it's not hard to see why, you know. So,
Do we have any questions for Ms. Greer? Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and close this public hearing. Thank you
okay,
so much.
no problem, thank you.
Ron, did you have something?
It sounds like, it looked like the mayor wanted to say something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, regarding both properties, it's something we really need here. Is after the Chester closed, after High Meadows closed, I was surprised to see the ad in the telephone directory that James River Inn is still operating. But that's 6-7 miles away. And this is a good use for those two buildings. I just wanted to say about the telephone exchange building. Vice Mayor Grisco may remember this. So it's been about 10 years ago, maybe, when the owners wanted to make an apartment out of it. And was classified then as a historic structure, and they wanted to do some changes to the windows, and that led to a big fight. But the main thing that was brought up with that application 10 years ago was that there's only one way in and one way out of the structure. There's no rear door. And just it was brought up to safety concerns, as you know, as much as anything else. So again, I say I'm all for the approving the permits for making these two buildings Airbnb places, but that was the only thing that was brought up in the past when we tried to change the status of the structure.
Well, I'm interested, if anybody has historic photos of the telephone switching station, I would love to see them. I'm interested in what door it originally had, for what it's worth. But I think in terms of the egress, it does have one means of egress, but the occupant load is well below 50. So I believe from a code perspective, from my perspective, I believe from the state of Virginia's perspective, it complies with the egress requirements. Though I understand if there were a fire, you'd have to go out the door. We were just gonna go ahead and leave the historic glass block and stuff, so.
That shouldn't be a problem. I'll check around the museum and see if we can find some old photographs for you.
I would love that. That would be amazing.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioners? The recommendation from staff is to approve with no conditions.
I would recommend that we approve with no conditions.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need roll vote on this? Voice or?
That's fine.
I'm sorry?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So Molly Angeline,
Yes.
Lisa Constantino.
I'm chair.
Sorry. Matthew Johnson,
Yes.
Dan Grisco,
Yes.
Shannon Strassner,
I,
Okay, motion approved on both 474 Valley Street and 496 Valley Street.
Clear, thank you.
One question. So then this goes back before in the April 8th meeting or April, early April, it goes to one more meeting, is that correct?
Yes, it will go before the town council, same
Okay.
process. They're going to meet to discuss it and then put it forward to public hearing again.
Okay, perfect. Thank
It's a
you.
little tedious, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zoning text amendment for home business regulations, public hearing. Anyone from the public care to discuss this? Mayor Smith?
No, I know through my work with the Chamber of Commerce that we have a lot of, I won't say a lot, we have a number of home businesses that aren't registered as businesses. I'll just throw this out there for you because this is more of a zoning thing probably than planning thing, but at our board meeting of the chamber the other morning, there's some current concern that some business owners are actually using, and this is on Valley Street, actually using their business as a place of residence, and that's not allowed. So I know across the street where Mr. Holt lives, we issued a special use permit for that to be an office and a residence in one place. But there seems to be a feeling that there's several other places on Valley Street where owners of businesses may be living there most of the time. So that's something we need to check into.
That is an interesting flip side to the proposal that's before you this evening. Doing business out of a home is one thing, living at a place of business is another, and the zoning fix is different for the two. I'd be glad to check with chamber members about that.
Interesting. Okay, so it's been a month since I looked at this, so just a refresher. We were looking to add the proposed zoning text definition in section 3.9 for home occupation class B. Here's the proposal. An occupation conducted in a dwelling unit with or without the use of one or more accessory structures for profit in connection with which there are employed not more than 2. The correction would be to change that to 4 persons other than family members residing on the premises, which may be in addition to such family members. So changing the employees from 2 to 4 for class B, and then for class C, which would be new, such occupation may be conducted either within the dwelling or an accessory structure or both, provided that not more than, originally we drafted it as 25%, but have changed it to 50% of the floor area of the dwelling shall be used in the conduct of the home occupation. In no event shall the total floor area of the dwelling, accessory structure, or both devoted to such occupation exceed, and this changed to 2,500 square feet, provided that the use of accessory structures shall be permitted only in connection with the home occupation class B. So this would be a new addition to the code. Staff, commissioners discussion?
I feel like we covered this when we were discussing the changes. I feel fine with it and don't have any questions.
Motion?
I move that we approve this as so stated.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll vote.
Ms. Angeline,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Briscoe,
Yes.
Strassner. Strassner,
Sorry. Aye.
Okay, so moved. Thank you. And that concludes the public hearing section of our old business. We're on to new business. We're going to hold off on 6A and move on to 6B, draft zoning for Scottsville's planned unit development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Share one more pack of papers here. Commissioners, I'm passing out a printout of the pack of recommended zoning updates from last year that I sent with the agenda to you on Thursday. This was helpful to me to check back in on as what the commission was considering for action after the adoption of the West Downtown Small Area Plan. We had a sort of to-do list of zoning updates that were called out in that small area plan as old errors in the zoning ordinance to fix up, but also implementation and action steps to help us achieve what we laid out as goals for downtown and the wider community in that small area plan. Several of those zoning updates were completed in the course of last year. But others went to a back burner as this planning commission shifted to the intensive work of development review. And it's difficult for a volunteer body meeting once a month with limited staff support to take on both major development applications and major zoning updates. So it absolutely makes sense that not everything that we thought would get done before last December got done. But credit where credit is due to this body. The text amendments that are in that first group were completed. A number of the map amendments were completed. And a couple of the issues went away on their own. The digital slot machine type of issues that we needed to regulate will be going away again in state law. And so we won't have to deal with that new kind of gambling issue in town much longer. One of the things that came out prominently during the public comment before this body on the Bird and Glenham development proposals was continued interest in the planned unit development or PUD regulatory framework. Planning Commission worked with the application as it came, and Town Council expects to make its final vote on that matter this month. But we all take that feedback from the public to heart, that the PUD could very well be a useful tool in the kit for the future, especially for larger, more complicated sites like the 50 acres of village residential on Glenham Road, which has another 100 acres of woodland behind it. We heard the feedback from the community loud and clear that a careful mix of uses is important there. We care about trails, we care about watershed conservation, and using the village residential base might not be good enough for that site. So having a tool that gives us more flexibility and creativity to plan something really special for that site could be important. The same applies at the 20-acre factory parcel on the other side of Bird Street. It has wetlands and floodplain, roads, parking lots. It has the largest building in town by far and could easily accommodate a mix of uses. Right now, that property is still zoned light industrial and heavy industrial, and the small area plan calls for an important change of use and redevelopment of that building. I don't see any one zoning category of the towns being able to accommodate the mix of park space, workshop space, doctor's office, gym, apartments that might go onto that site, and then be sensitive to the parking needs, the environmental and flood control needs, storing bicycles, all of that. So I take the feedback very sincerely that the PUD could be a very useful tool for both of those large-scale redevelopment projects, as well as providing some creative opportunities for investors like Ms. Greer to work with sites and think outside the box a little bit from what basic zoning provides. So your PUD draft that's before you lets you do that. This is not totally new to the town. Indeed, the draft that we have before us is 12, 14 years old. Mr. Gritzko might remember the first round on this from a previous development proposal at Glenham Road before the last recession. The town had some interest in this topic and commissioned the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission to draft a PUD ordinance. The economic crash, 2008, 2009, removed the need for that tool. The demand for the project went away and the town never adopted the PUD ordinance, but it was drafted and ready to go at that time. So when the town community expressed interest in it again, we dug that draft up and took another look at it. So what I present to you this evening is largely unchanged in process from what appeared before town council in 2009. The slight edits that I made to it are mainly on the front page of it. 14.1, the objective. There are about a dozen goals for what a PUD ordinance does.
Where am I looking?
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
Most of the way
It's
through.
the back 5 pages of this.
Okay.
The PUD ordinance has two sort of sections. The list of objectives and then a permitting process. The permitting process is pretty similar to the site plan review process that we'll take on in the second half of the agenda this evening. In the PUD, a fair amount of design work and engineering goes in upfront. The application packet for a PUD will be much more intensive than what you saw for the Bird and Glenham applications last year. It's much closer to a construction-ready set of blueprints, and it answers many more of the questions of what does the site actually look like when built. That's a lot more expensive for a developer to produce, so they look for greater margins in the project if they're going to do that work. But it also provides the town with a lot more clarity in what's coming. So there's a mix of creativity and control. The developer benefits from being able to work outside some of the restrictions that normally apply in our base zoning, but the community benefits from the control of having a veto on the PUD application. In the PUD ordinance, there is nothing by right. Everything is a case-by-case project review. And that's important, that we wouldn't proactively rezone any piece of land as PUD, because that would take away all of the owner's by right options and would zero out the property cycle. So PUD only comes forward from an applicant if they think they have an interesting idea for a mix of uses on a property that wouldn't normally fly in the regular zoning. So they'll come with their drawings and their plans and have to clear a fairly high burden of proof to the community that what they're doing deserves this special treatment and needs to be handled outside of the normal framework of commercial or village residential zoning. But maybe they can show a creative mix of uses like that. I can imagine a working farm. Take an old farm property and someone wanted to preserve some farming uses on it, crops, bees, livestock, but also have farm events like your weddings and your farm tours and tourism, but also have some guest cottages for farm workers and interns and students and retirees, multi-generational living, and then also a retail shop selling some of the farm produce. That basket of uses doesn't fit in any zoning category that they have now. So if they had a 10-acre farm that they wanted to rezone as this interesting experience, they might need PUD to accommodate that. And so they would show their plan, show their drawings, and the town could consider it. The framework that the town would use to judge these applications, does it fit, is it in the town's best interest? That's the bullet point list of a dozen criteria at the front of the ordinance, which is the most important part of it. I tried to put these in priority order, and this list provides clarity both to a developer and to the community about how these things are going to be judged. This is totally open to revision, and is critically important. It shows investors what kinds of projects the town is interested in seeing, and it lets the town make a strategic decision about these kinds of applications that it be clear to the community how we're evaluating them, and that it's not a matter of favorites or caprice. So I'd be happy to answer more about what's here and what goes into it, and spend as much time on discussion of this as you'd like.
So this was organized, this was put together originally by the Thomas Jefferson Planning, what's their?
The Planning District Commission.
Planning District Commission. Which is a respected entity that does planning, and we've referred to them over the 2 years that I've been on this body where to get feedback on things that we were working on. And so, okay, thank you.
So Matt, what you're saying also is that this is driven specifically by a particular parcel of land or particular uses. It's not creating a way for a unique opportunity to be viewed, and this unique place has lots of different things that could be done that are out of the normal, so to speak.
Yes, sir. Specifically driven by the urgency of the tire pipe redevelopment. That if the community's intended use is preserving park area in the wetlands and then using the building for a mix of small business spaces, a daycare center, some apartments for elderly people, and some different apartments for families, that mix of uses is illegal under our current zoning. So if that's what we want on that site, we need a tool that gives us that flexibility.
Would you think that to approve something like this, it almost presupposes we would have already done something with the houses, so to speak? I mean, in other words, this is obviously if they were both in equal position, you could go one direction or the other, develop the factories, develop the land. But it would seem to me if this comes more into play if we actually have something move to happen on the houses themselves.
Maybe.
In other words, it shows good faith, so to speak, and efforts that we're making versus, I mean, they're unrelated to each other in the sense that there's a project here that develops a factory and there's a project there that does houses. But collectively, they create a desired community impact, and to bring the resources together to make this happen, you would want to have the other in place, or I mean, they have to work together.
Yes, there are situations where the base zoning of a village residential or a commercial is exactly what you want, and it provides clarity and control. You know what the setbacks are going to be, you know what the height limits are going to be, and those things aren't open for negotiation. So sometimes the by right zoning or the special use permit control is what you want for a site like that. Other times those rules get in the way, and it's easier to help a developer do something interesting, and the town feels hamstrung by its own rules. So PUD gives you some creative control.
So what is our goal for this line item? Are we looking to approve this draft or contribute to it?
There's a lot here, and I wouldn't expect approval of it anytime quickly.
Okay.
I'm looking to walk you through what's here, and explain how it works. Maybe give examples of what this review would look like. In particular, where I feel like I need the most help is with the dozen list of objectives on the first page of it. Are those actually the community's priorities? And are they in priority order? The procedural stuff is a little bit more boilerplate and is shared across a lot of similar ordinances all over the country. There are a few moving parts in there that you could change, but the part that's really special to Scottsville is this list of a dozen things up front. If, for example, you didn't think that bicycles were important, you might take the bicycle path list off of the middle of this thing. Or if you really, really loved bicycles and thought that they were the future, maybe you put it higher up on the list. But that's a judgment call for us.
Okay, because I was very interested in the document and got a gist of it, but I have not been able to get through the whole thing. And I would like to have some time to do that.
Absolutely.
So to give my recommendations. So, you know, I would love to hear, you know, any parts that you feel strongly about or whatever, but I'm not really ready to discuss in full.
And to be clear, this is the sort of thing that would definitely have to go before the public in a public hearing, right?
Oh, yes. It, I presented it as actually replacing the town's industrial zoning. If we don't think that that heavy industry is ever coming back and is not ever a goal of the town's future, replacing heavy industry entirely with PUD fits it into the framework of the chapter there. We would still have a light industrial category for modern industry, but if something like tire manufacturing we don't think is our future, replace it with this.
Can you pull up the zoning map and, or are we still zoned high industrial, heavy industrial over there?
The only heavy industrial in town is the area under the roof of the factory.
Okay, so just that building,
Yep.
okay.
It's the only heavy industrial site.
Matt, I have a question about PUDs in kind of in general.
Sure.
If we adopt, you know, we discuss this, adopt this document, how does it apply to different parcels of land around town? Would we have to say, if a developer is interested in, for instance, the Upper Bird Street property, and they come to us and say, hey, we're looking to develop some land here, would we then go back to them and say, we think this would be a great opportunity for you to provide a PUD for us on this particular property? Like, would we require it on some properties and not others? How does that work?
That's correct.
Okay.
The town would not proactively rezone anything to PUD because that would amount to a taking. In the PUD, there are no by right options. So you zero out the property value until a plan is approved.
Okay.
PUD comes forward when somebody has an idea for a development that doesn't fit well with our existing zoning. So we might advertise that we have this tool available and encourage creative investment. And then if someone shows up with the mixed use farm concept that I gave as an example, they share an idea and we encourage them and say, yeah, that looks like it might fit. Why don't you put together a PUD application for us? And then the contents of that application are shown in the ordinance and it'd be considered case by case. But it would probably be one of those situations like what Ms. Greer was describing here, where an investor is under contract to purchase a property contingent on getting their zoning approval. So we would work on it in that way. They wouldn't buy a property, apply for PUD, fail, and then be stuck with property they couldn't use the way they wanted.
Okay. Thank you.
And to some of that negotiation, I think Commissioner Strassner anticipates, there is a sort of framework for this negotiation that shows here, this pre-application review. It formally invites applicants to meet with the mayor, our consulting architect, and other stakeholders as we see fit in a pre-application team meeting that lets us formally go over our process the investor can pitch the idea, and we can say a little bit about how well it fits the town's plans. That's certainly not a binding decision in advance, but it gives them a little bit of encouragement before they proceed to do what might be tens of thousands of dollars of design work to present their plan.
Looking specifically at the objectives.
Yeah.
Letter I, provide coordinated linkages among internal buildings and uses. Do you mean like paths?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
just, there's gotta be like a comprehensive or a cohesion between them. They're not just standalone, independent. They have some sort of connectivity.
It
Gotcha.
gets to the fit of how it sort of looks, how the buildings work together, but also the functional linkages that you be able to walk between things and maybe not have to drive everywhere.
And so these objectives were pulled together from our master plan.
That's right. I tried to cite the town comprehensive plan for principal statements of what kind of design is the town looking for.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
What other kind of study work would this need before it felt ready? It's very much just an unveiling of a first draft.
Do you have a comparable town who did something like that? Is there something that would fit like that?
Yeah, yes, the planned unit development term is defined in state law as a thing that localities have the power to do. And the concept goes back 25 years now. So you could search Virginia planned unit development ordinance and find a fair number of them scattered around the state, and see different examples of this.
But it's going to be unique to the building itself that they're doing it.
Yes, each community will define a little bit different list of how exactly do they want to use this. And then you can see good, bad, and ugly examples of how it was used or misused in practice.
I'd like to see some bad examples.
Sure.
Can you pull some together for us?
Sure.
And good too.
Yeah. That's a good point. That it's been long enough that we've had these now that things that folks were excited to approve 20 years ago, have they aged well or not?
Well, what I like about this is it's entirely case by case. So
Yeah.
once we approve this and, once we come up with something that we are comfortable with, we would get an enormous amount of veto power over the project. So, and we have all of our questions answered up front, which is exactly what we're struggling with now regarding Blenheim and Bird Street. So, I mean, to me, this is a win-win. It's a little more work for the investor, but they're, once they put that footwork in, they've gotten the bulk of the work out of the way, and it's either a yes or a no. So it sounds like it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I think a history example kind of practice would be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
what would our anticipated timeline on bringing this to fruition look like? And what are our action steps for, say, next month?
I like the history example. I'll certainly work on that research. Our past intern, Chris Waring, is very interested in this topic. He's finished his paid work with the town, but he has a capstone research project, which is going to touch on this a little bit. He's interested in putting together a couple of hypotheticals on it. So if we arrived at a draft that we were fairly confident on, he could apply that to a couple of sites that we chose and give us like a rough draft of an application? Like, what would it look like if we had these rules and he put himself in the developer's shoes? What would he do on a site like Glenelg? And that would let you see a little bit of a reality check on how the ordinance worked. So that might be helpful to see something in practice before adopting. I think my advice at this point would be to sit with those objective statements on that first page and really take those to heart. Are they the things that are most important to the town? Or are we missing something else? Should we be explicit about other kinds of community goals that maybe I'm not thinking about?
Matt, let me say this. I actually been trying to think if I should say this or not, but I will say this, is that one of the things that I have seen being on the town council is that the planning commission will do excellent work. They will do what seems to make sense from a planning perspective. It comes to the town council, and the town council deals with it. And then from a public standpoint, trying to think of how to phrase this. There will be objections that are raised that don't seem to make sense. I'll just say it that way, and lots of them. And so we are dealing with that currently. And so there's one level of this that seems very frustrating to me, where we will see good public policy created by the planning commission, a lot of really good work. So for example, if this is created, create a really good one, put it out there, and then it will be met with a less than welcome reception by some people in the town who are intent on seeing nothing done over there. So I guess my point is, now being in the planning commission, is say, how do we get that through the process? How do we either meet the needs that those people have, override those needs that those people have, or figure out how do we move forward? Because again, sitting in this position, which is new to me, even though I've been on the council for a long time, I'm used to getting the pizza mostly cooked.
Yeah.
And when the pizza is mostly cooked, then we have to deal with the political ramifications. So what I'm kind of saying is, there's been a lot of good work done over here making the pizza, then over there they drop the pizza.
Well, maybe that means proactive engagement. Maybe it's important to be really careful asking folks what toppings they want on their pizza before we make it, and have that argument. And then you're not arguing over whether or not we like the pizza once it's cooked.
But I will say too, that has also happened, and then they drop the pizza anyways. So they put the toppings on it that they want, they drop the pizza. They don't put the pizza toppings they want, they drop the pizza. You're hearing from me absolute concern that good public policy is being thwarted in our town. And I'm simply saying, as we move forward and we create good public policy, because it's not an issue of what I think or what other people think. We need to make good public policy. And coming up with a plan for an old factory that is not being used at the moment and finding a creative way for it to be used makes a lot of sense. Makes sense to everybody probably in this room. But how we do that, I'm recognizing that there are forces out there that seem intent on sabotaging that effort. And so I will simply say, how do we circumvent that? And I'll bring that back to you, Matt, because I would like to see good public policy. I want people's input. I want people to be involved. We want to hear reasonable conversation. But doing nothing with that factory is not a reasonable solution that I think. I think doing nothing there to me is a destructive answer. And I think some people in our town would be happy with doing nothing there. So for my part, I'm somewhat venting, and I'm venting openly because I think we need to make sure that what comes through here doesn't see a planning commissioner leave town because they feel threatened, or doesn't result in poor public policy decisions. And even as we move forward, that we that we work together, people that have different ideas. All ideas are welcome. But ideas that are sabotaging good public policy, that is not welcome. So at any rate, I throw it all out to you as planning commissioners. I very much applaud your work and I want to see it be successful. And I, as a town councilor, I'm frustrated at times, not in what you do, but what happens when it comes to us and other forces that get involved. I just want to see what can we do to help grease the wheel, so to speak. And I think that's a good point, Matt, is figuring out, maybe we see what else needs to be added to the pizza so it's not purposely dropped as it has been in the past. I'm not blaming you for that.
So good, being really explicit about specific factors like wetland and watershed protection, right? We heard that, I think, as a good faith concern on both projects.
Absolutely.
So be very clear that that's something that we all care about, and that any developer has a high bar to clear, that they need to show us how our water is going to be clean. And if they can't prove that to us, we're voting no. And I would hope that the most skeptical voice would see that clear in our law, hold us accountable to it, and trust us that we mean it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that the public engagement is important, and what town council did with the question and answer forum, I thought that was beautiful, because we have topics here all the time that we cover, and we between us have answers, or, you know, forever, whoever is here to hear it, but making a concerted effort to have the public hear those answers also is really valuable.
Absolutely.
And that's how you get the buy-in, and that's how you get people to feel comfortable with the process and engaged in the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And constantly referring back to the comprehensive plan and using the goals and objectives that are laid out in that plan. And then, you know, when you guys had your meeting in February, your work session, you were going back to the comprehensive plan and saying, you know, people are saying they don't want housing, but here it is. This is what the comprehensive plan says.
Right.
So having that balance and creating that good policy. It's hard to get that engagement sometimes, but it's something we all have to work at.
Absolutely. A good and fair engagement, I'm all for. Unfair engagement, I am against. And we've had enough of that recently.
I think you raise a good point. I think that a lot of this is, especially in regards to the factory, so much of this is out of our hands. From what I understand, it's someone, you know, it's the person who holds the property that has turned down just about every idea that has come across for the factory. So I'd say, you know, we have the best intentions and can come up with careful planning, but until, you know, people are willing to work with us or cooperate or whatever the word might be, we're spinning our wheels on that one. So I hate to be negative about it, but it's true. I mean, there's only so much we can do if there's not going to be a sense of community and cooperation and you know, exchange of ideas in that area.
That's right. That's right. This
If we're,
this law is a tool in the box, but if the owners of property don't want to use those tools, then we
Well,
go nowhere.
then they just have to stick with whatever zoning parameters they have.
That's right.
I mean, this gives a little bit more flexibility and creativity and an ability to do something outside the box. If they're not happy with their land uses as they are right now, which maybe they're not, this is another opportunity for them.
Right.
I think that open engagement is definitely the answer. And, you know, I'd like to see more of this happen, because I've been hearing this ever since I moved to town. 5 years isn't a super long time to have been here in this community, but I embrace it 100% and would like to stop hearing the same answers to these questions. You know, the whole, you know, we can't use the storefronts because the people who own them want to gouge the rent or whatever. It's like, why are we even dealing with that? And what can we do as a town to motivate these people to make decisions that are good for the town? I don't have an answer to that, but sure would like to have some pretty open and honest discussions like that. And there you have it.
Do we mention in the comprehensive plan affordability?
Yes.
I see you addressing affordability where you make mention to density and efficient uses and clustering single-family homes. I
Sorry.
know that's a big thing for our community.
Lisa, are you talking about the comprehensive plan or the draft PUD?
The draft PUD,
Okay.
how it might address affordability.
Gotcha.
I mean, I guess it also depends on what someone would want to do, because single-family housing isn't necessarily a part of someone's plan.
No, and these could be used for strictly commercial.
Right.
But if it has a residential component and we want to be explicit about mixed income, we should probably say that, and the current draft does not. This might be, please, sorry.
I was, something that you just said brought up a question. Can we cover commercial and residential properties in one PUD? Or do we need to have two separate PUDs drawn up?
The goal is to potentially allow lots of different mixes. So the same framework can be used for something that had 3 different kinds of residential use, or something that had 3 different kinds of commercial use, or 2 residential and 2 commercial. Your review process is the same.
Great.
So priority 1, provide for developments, especially those of mixed use.
Yeah.
So it would be great if housing was included, but it doesn't have to be, but it is encouraged and desired.
Yeah, so if somebody brought you a project that was 10 acres of commercial, like a mall, you might ask, where are all the workers gonna live? Can't there be some apartments behind and above these shops, same as we have on Valley Street? And maybe you're pretty skeptical of an old-fashioned mall because there's nowhere for the people who work there to live. And that would be good criticism based on that top criteria. Conversely, somebody brings you something that's all residential and you say, well, all of those people are just going to get on the roads and drive to their jobs. Can't we put some office and shopping stuff in this project too? So maybe some of the people will work right near where they live. And that would be a good reason to kill a 100% residential project. You insist on mixed use.
Now, one of the things that one of the other planning commissioners said there was about the property itself and Dr. Hurt's reluctance. One of the things I think, if I may be inaccurate in my understanding, but I think in a sense we've been nudging him, and as we've nudged him and nudged him and nudged him, he's gotten more interested. And the markets have changed and the world has changed, and it's a whole different entity than it was in 2010 or 2008 or 9. The world is very different. So the opportunities that are there are really, we are trying to drive the car, so to speak, and invite him to step on with us is ultimately what's happening. I say that to one of our planning commissioners there, is the sense that Dr. Hurt is, I mean, this is one of, I don't even know how many places does he own. I mean, he owns, this is one of many, many properties. It's big to us, but he owns many places. And the idea of trying to create something has been helpful. And Matt, you've done a lot to help us as a town with your wisdom to help us to actually target this area that's long been, just before I came on the town council was when it went out of business, was when the factory went out of business, and where 100 jobs were lost to this area, some nearby, others further away. And all that to say, we're at a time right now where something actually can happen. I mean, I actually know of business people that are interested in the property. I mean, people are, but they're interested in it based off of what else are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? What is Dr. Hurd gonna do? So my point in all that is simply to say, as we move forward, we actually are making a way for this to actually happen. This is not just allowing him to react. And this is, we're creating a way where something can happen. And so that's where I would come back to you, Matt, with your expertise, is then this is what was created some years ago. What do we need to add to it now? That's I guess that's the key. What are the newer things that need to be on there, that the new realities of where we are as COVID is ending, as we are dealing with the housing issue, pass or fail, whatever we do, how does that adjust what was done in the past?
One of the things that was in the first draft that I took out was a minimum size on the PUD. Some of these ordinances say that no project will be entertained under this ordinance unless it's 10 acres big. We want the projects to be substantial if we're going to do all the work of studying them. I took that out on the idea that 2 acres downtown is a lot. And if somebody wants to put in the work to do this application for a small site, maybe someone like Ms. Greer rearranging uses on an existing property and adding something. I see no problem to having small projects that fit in here, and you might end up with some really fun, creative things that way. So that's an example of a response.
You've already
to
made some
the
adaptations.
old-fashioned large PUD mega subdivisions. Well, we don't really like those. Maybe we like the small PUDs better.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And that fact of trying to think about, and maybe go back to the point of both the practical side and going back to what I said before, knowing that there has been or will be some level of community resistance, is to meet those needs, not just to try to override them, but to meet the needs that they have so that they're addressed and the reasonable needs of that are there. So that may be something that we think about, or think about how that is adjusted given new realities of the changing nature of our town and the work world and everything.
Does anyone have a motion to move this forward to some level of public engagement?
Before we do that, do we need to look at it and discuss it more as a group? What are the next steps as far as actually getting a draft ready for that?
That's what it sounded like. Were you saying that, Planning Commissioner Angevine? Were you saying you needed more time?
Yeah, I wanted to take a little more time with it. I'm sorry to say that I did not get a chance to study it completely. I just did a quick look to see what it was. I think it's well put together, but it's pretty lengthy, and I wanted to take time to take a look at it and maybe offer some suggestions and maybe have more questions. So sorry about that, but
No,
I just
that's reasonable.
have a little time. Okay.
If we don't have major new business next month, I might get back with Chris Waring and ask him to do that mock application. If he's got anything cooked up by next month, and put him in the hot seat of pretending to be a developer and bring some of his work, and you could kind of try this on. And he'd give a presentation and you could scrutinize it and see how it felt. wouldn't be real, but kind of a sandbox with draft rules.
I think that sounds like a really great idea. There's nothing like practical uses, looking at that in that way to help see what kind of problems or holes might be in it.
Yeah. My thinking is, I think that there's going to be a lot of public interest in this, and I'd rather get that engagement early on before we get too far along in it, because there might be some really valid, really important feedback and things that we're just not going to think of. So I'd really like to get that engagement. And having a public hearing doesn't mean that we have to decide next month, and we've got a whole month to sit and look at this and ask questions and
Absolutely.
ponder it.
Yep.
And certainly we don't have to vote next month either.
I agree with that. I think it would be great to pull it all together at that point.
Mhm.
Sure.
I'm of the same mind there. I'd love to take the month to really sit down with it and get a feel for what we're going to attempt to do with this, and then also have that public hearing. I think that's a great idea to give us a context or a structure to better understand what we're trying to accomplish here.
I make a motion that we put together a public hearing on this issue to look at the draft of the Scottsville PUD.
I'll second that motion.
Voice a roll.
Oh, what's that sound?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so moved.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. This is exciting.
Yes,
All
right on time.
right, excellent.
Perfect timing.
All right, so 6B having been completed, we now have Kelsey Schlein on the line, who would like to discuss 6A. So let's jump over to 6A, site plan review for 153 James River Road.
Hey, everyone, can you all hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being accommodating with your agenda this evening. I really appreciate that. For 153 James River Road, we've made a preliminary site plan submittal to the town. Please stop me if I'm being redundant on anything that Matt may have already introduced. We've gone to the ARB twice and are working through largely the main concern centers around existing trees on the site, and the possible preservation of a few of them. So with the ARB, we're currently working through that item, but for you all, we've submitted a preliminary site plan. Believe we have everything in accordance with the regulations. I mean, everything is informed from day one by, setbacks, building height, parking calculations, parking setbacks, landscape buffers. And so I'm happy to go through and as much or as little detail as you'd like me to about the site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schlein. Matt here. The commission's in an exciting place with the detailed applications for new commercial development. It is unusual for us. We don't get to this point in development process very often. So it's a learning moment for all of us, how we go through this and kind of run the procedures of site plan review. So I'm sharing out with the commissioners now, again, the site plan development ordinance in our zoning ordinance that walks through step by step how we get from this phase of zoning permits being approved. That was a year ago on this project, and building permits have not been approved yet. So there's this in-between step of the site plan review where the planning commission and the staff look in more detail at what exactly is being built and a whole set of community standards that need to be satisfied before building permits can be issued. And we provided this assurance to the public that this review would be rigorous, that the questions around the special use permits, in this case, the car wash and the drive-through, that wasn't the end of the story. And the same thing happened with the special use permit applications at Bird and Blenheim. There were questions around traffic flow, utilities, public spaces, where the detail wasn't complete at the special use permit phase. It didn't need to be. Those questions would be answered during site plan review. So that's where we are now. So I put together a checklist using Albemarle counties as a model. Their site plan ordinance is very similar to ours. It's just the numbering that's different. And Kelsey, I sent this to you. Could we walk through this together and explain what is in your site plan submission and how it satisfies this checklist?
Yeah, certainly. Hold on one second. I'm just going to bring up that email that you sent me.
And commissioners, part of the submission is 10 copies of this blueprint set. So if you would like to have one of these for your use at home, just stop on by and pick one up. They're large printouts that make it really easy to see all of the details of the site. Site plan review will not be completed this month. There's no pressure for the commission to act. Tonight we can get our bearings on what's in this plan and how to read these drawings. And Kelsey and I will walk through what's here. But we have some important judgment calls to make about whether the contents of this plan work for us and whether what's shown is adequate.
Do we have anything in soft copy yet, or is it all there in hard copy?
Kelsey, I don't think you sent me a big file that has this digitally, did you?
I can, yeah, I can send out a digital copy. Do you mind if I share my screen? Or, sorry, I don't think I have that permission. I could also bring it up here as well, but I'll send out a PDF.
Thank you.
Sure.
That will be more helpful than me pointing to things on this camera.
Okay, I'm going to stop your screen share, Matt. Is that okay? Perfect. Okay, so I'll just zoom out a little bit and start back. So going through the checklist that Matt sent along. Let's see here. Are you all still looking at the plan?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I hadn't taken that away. Size, so I guess just kind of going down, number of copies, 10. The scale and size, the plan shall be prepared to a scale of 1 inch equals 20 feet or to another scale approved by the agent in a particular case. So that's a very standard terminology, basically in every locality. Typically 1 to 20, 1 to 30 is preferred. Anything less than 1 to 60 and then going up to 1 to 100 is standard. It's typically not standard to go 1 to 70, 1 to 80, or 1 to 90, just because if you're reviewing these plans by hand and you're using an engineer's scale for all the measurements, there's no measurement for 70, 80, or 90. It's goes 1 to 60. So we have ours prepared at 1 to 30. You can see the scale down here, north arrow. And then where the first sheet that we're looking at is the existing conditions, which is basically a site survey of what's on the ground right now. So we have our property boundaries shown, existing contours, where the existing utilities are located, and the existing house on the property, as well as the roads here. We have James River Road and Route 20 on the property and adjacent property lines as well. And so going through, I guess, the checklist, we have our boundary. This is the proposed conditions. So we have our boundary shown. We have our setbacks, which are shown in the fence line. So there's both a setback for parking and there's a setback for the building. And so both of those are kind of shown in this fence line type here.
The right-of-way issue was important for the ARB on Thursday. But that's land that VDOT continues to maintain. And so you were saying that you couldn't guarantee the existence of trees that are in that right-of-way because VDOT might need them to be cut down, right?
Yeah, certainly. So that's shown, so in the hatch here. So this is the right-of-way, basically a dedication proposed. There's a section in the ordinance that requires basically any site plan that comes under review that's on property that has frontage on roads that have prescriptive easements, which basically means that the right-of-way, like the full, almost like a right-of-way parcel, for lack of a better term, was never established. The property boundary actually goes to the center line of road. For any property where the property line is technically at the center line of the road, a 25-foot right-of-way dedication needs to be provided. So that's what you're seeing in the hatch here, is from the center line of James River Road and from the center line of Route 20 Valley Street, we have a 25-foot right-of-way dedication, which then modifies our boundary. So this is the new boundary here. This is the old boundary center line of road, and then our setbacks are coming off the new boundary. So, sorry, Matt, were you going to say something?
Thank you. Good.
Sure. Yeah, let me know if I'm boring you or going into too many details, or I want to make sure everyone's, able to look at this and, clearly understand legibly what we're proposing, but I, definitely don't want to be redundant or going into far too much more detail than you need.
Bring it on. I like about it. So I'm good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just stop me if it's too much. So other requirements on the checklist is just the general information, name of development, name of the owner. So typically the way that site plans are structured, we have the first sheet set up. That's our information page. So we have our owner, developer who prepared the plan, zoning information, all the setback information with code references, and trip generation. And so that is basically the general information portion of the checklist is all included on the site plan. And I will say, if anything is, if anything is omitted, it certainly isn't intentional. There's a lot to work through with these checklists, and sometimes we're presenting information and it might not be exactly in the way that you expect to see it. And so typically with site plans, there's you submit them and then you get comments back from the locality, and especially on a final. Maybe on a preliminary, you might say, well, this is good enough for us to approve. We're going to approve it preliminary with conditions. You need to add the following information, change X, Y, and Z to meet our ordinance, but preliminary approval is good. And then at the final site plan, let's say we left out information about the special use permit that was approved in our information sheet. And then you just, provide that as a comment, please provide special use permit, date of approval, and list of approved conditions. Just to make sure that there's a good record there and that we're meeting everything that's required on the checklist.
That's right. And I do thank you for the thorough submission here. You turned this in before I had a checklist. So we're field testing it here.
I know, I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know if I saw it, but it looks great. It's a great checklist. I think it's you put it together quick, Matt. So, and then everything else. So we kind of structured things where we have the existing conditions and it goes into the proposed plan. We don't have contours shown on this page. There's a lot of information to include on a site plan. And so basically every page is just like, you know, picking and choosing like what makes sense for that particular page. So this is the site development plan. You can see what we're proposing here. The next sheet is this is our utility plan. And so on here, you know, drawing emphasis, your eyes drawn to the utilities that are proposed. And going through that, these kind of dotted lines, this is all of our stormwater infrastructure. And the stormwater plan is under review by Albemarle County. We already made one submission and are just coordinating with the owners on making our resubmission, but we got just a few comments on that. So once we resubmit, hopefully we'll be in a good place for stormwater approval. But all of the dotted lines, that is just showing basically pipes in the ground. So we have roof drains coming off the canopy, roof drains coming off the building, all tying into these stormwater pipes, which eventually lead to this biofilter, which is just on the adjacent property that's under the common ownership. And Albemarle County is doing a detailed review of the biofilter. So you don't need to get into that and all the calculations involved. And we have our water line shown where a new water meter is going to be, new sewer line shown as well. Water lines typically just depicted by the W line, sewer line by the S. Next sheet here is our grading plan.
Right, I'm already lost. Could I ask you to pause 1 second?
Yeah,
and point out
of course.
where's the bioretention basin? Where? Okay, it's off site on
And
the
then they
other.
detail it here.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
I was just wondering where here it was, so it's off site.
Yep.
Okay,
It's got to be down below, and they bought this other parcel.
right.
It drops a little bit, and this
This is
shows
the
how they
contours.
manage it.
Okay,
It's
all
gonna
right.
be like an underwater pond or something.
So, bioretention, there's some plants here, and then is it underground storage, or are we seeing a hole that's going to be some standing water in a pond?
So this is all above ground. But the biofilter, let me pull up, is like it's like a planted dry pond. Let me pull this up. So. Of course, I'm not finding any good pictures on.
Water goes through these plants, and then it discharges into this hole, and then it can spill over if it needs to. Spill over where? Further down the parcel. This is where the spillway.
Where does this? So where?
Irish Road is down here.
Okay, so this is, I'm gonna re-share my screen with you.
It would, Mr. Gritsko is trying to get his bearings on how the whole parcel kind of fits together, and your two zoom levels don't show that real well. Like how far away is the bioretention pond from Irish Road below it?
Oh, sure. Let me pull up an aerial and just show you kind of approximately on the site where everything is. Okay, so the biofilter is kind of proposed right on the other side of this property line. It's approximately in this location right here. So this is the subject, this is the property where the gas station car wash is proposed, and then everything kind of drains to right here. And this is where the biofilter will be. So that's
Where will the pond be?
that'll be, so I guess I'm kind of using those words interchangeably. let me pull up the detail. So the biofilter is in this location, and that extends out to the dry pond, which is more so in this location.
About 100 feet wide and 15 feet deep. The intent is to hold all of the water that falls on the site.
There's two reasons I'm asking this. One is information to understand the overall project. The other one is because I'm right next to you. So my own property is right next. It's one down from there. The other way, that's.
There we go.
Yep. So I'm just trying to understand how, so you say it's going to be, in a sense, a dry pond, it's not going to stay, or it'll be fenced off or something?
I think that'll all, typically you see the ones that are like the ones that they recently like fenced off on 29. That's a VDOT requirement. It's not always required, just, kind of based on how the facility is designed, the depth, and like this one, the bottom is 4 feet from kind of the top of the dam effectively. And so we don't have any fencing detail proposed at this point.
There's, again, following that through. So basically the idea is that water would be retained on the property theoretically.
Yeah, well, so we cannot create more runoff from the site than currently exists today. So everything, all the stormwater facilities that are provided, there's two purposes. One, to treat the water, provide, ensure that we're meeting stormwater quality requirements, but also stormwater quantity requirements, and ensuring that we're not increasing the quantity of water running off the site from what currently leaves the site today. So we have to construct, some type of storage to effectively, when it rains, hold the water for a period of time, and it releases slowly through that outfall pipe over a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it might be helpful for you to know I'm favorable to your project, even though my property is nearby, but I'm very interested in how you design it.
Sure, yeah. Well, definitely, one of our engineers in the office, I'm a planner, but one of our engineers handles all the stormwater calculations and plans. And so, if you all wanted to talk about that kind of more in depth, I can ensure that one of them are on the call at some point.
Well, I'll say this even more specifically. I know that spot extremely well. I'll just say it that way. Like I know that spot blindfolded.
Yeah. This is a good example of the kind of back and forth process that happens here, where, like you said, the stormwater review is done by the specialist engineers at Albemarle County's office, and they have their own water protection ordinance that this plan needs to comply with. When a project like this is done in Albemarle County, those two sides of the house can talk to each other. Should we expect to get an evaluation of your plan from Albemarle County's engineer that we can then use to make our decision about this whole site plan?
Well, you could ask, sorry, was that directed towards me? I'm sorry, Matt.
Yes, please.
Okay, sure.
when the county's process is adapted to include the town, what should we expect from that workflow?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, so typically a site plan is not approved until your stormwater plan is approved.
Right.
And so that is like a typical process. And so John Anderson is the lead reviewer on this plan. And when he feels that the plan is approvable, he'll issue an approval letter to us. And I mean, we can ensure that that's circulated to you, and typically the process in Albemarle County, if we were dealing exclusively with, that locality, the site plan would not be approved until the stormwater plan was approved.
Right, okay. So where at the normal county process, Mr. Anderson just has to send it over to plan review. Here he has to send it outside of the county to us. So that's something we can expect, that third-party evaluation of the stormwater.
Yeah, definitely. You should get, from Albemarle County, eventually an approval letter on the VSMP plan, and then from VDOT, basically no further comments from them, saying it's more so a letter saying no further comments. You must do X, Y, and Z before applying for your right-of-way permit. And, please contact the area land use engineer when you're ready to secure that permit.
Right.
And it seems like a good plan that you have. I mean, I'm giving it scrutiny, but it seems a workable plan.
Did you see the VDOT trip generation number on the front? This is the VDOT note with some detail above it. So that's that expected trip generation. That number came up during the special use permit discussion, and it's shown again here. That number is small enough that it's not going to trigger any special review from VDOT. If this were a bigger project and that trip generation number were much larger, then VDOT would get more involved about testing the intersections and evaluating whether a traffic light was needed or something like that. But that's not the case here.
Okay.
Matt, just a question. So when they have this split off here, this is a more recent split off that they have here, correct?
Is that
On the map that she had up there, it has this other split off.
with the property lines?
It kind of cuts through here. Is that a more recent split off?
What are you pointing to on the plan?
She was just there. See how that,
Oh, yes, the property lines have changed.
yeah, see how that split is like
Yes.
that.
I hadn't caught that other change.
Okay.
But yes, those are different parcels now, and that map doesn't show it yet.
Okay, so that split off shows you there, it's those two pieces, right?
Yes, but that didn't,
Or even three pieces.
yeah, but that didn't used to be like that.
Right,
Yes.
that's what because I'm looking at the whole, what we have here.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any issue with the fact that this retention pond is on another parcel? Obviously, they're owned by the same company, but this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this.
That's an interesting question. What happens to the requirements at that retention pond if the lower parcel sells to somebody else?
Prior to our VSMP plan being approved, or kind of concurrent when it's ready to be approved, we have to record a stormwater management maintenance agreement with Albemarle County, which basically says that the developer agrees to uphold and maintain that stormwater easement or that stormwater facility in perpetuity effectively, and that we will have to establish an easement for that facility, and that facility, that easement will exist for the benefit of the gas station parcel. So even the let's say let's say the 130, this parcel here is sold to somebody else. Well, there will be a stormwater facility easement established for the benefit of this property.
If I buy that lot and want to build my house on it, I can't turn that into my fish pond.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
And what will happen with the existing well?
The existing well will be I guess it'll be capped or just abandoned in this location, since we're tying into public water.
And on the map that we were looking at before, C4, what is this what are the drawings that are right off of James River Road, the boxes of 4 with the little ovals in them, and then the boxes of 2 on the side and the French drain? Nope, top, there you go. You just brought it into view there. Those, the pieces on the corner. Yeah, what is all that? The boxes that are drawn, not the line, that's the sewer line, but the box of 4 that's connected by the little triangles and the boxes of 2 on the side that are parallel to James River Road and then Valley.
Those are the canopies, right?
No, there, those.
Yes, that's the gas canopy.
It's like the roof over the gas tanks.
Okay, so there's a little French drain in front of the pull-in.
Because the rain that falls on the roof of the gas canopy needs to go somewhere.
Yeah, and yes, yeah. So there's a drain capturing the rain that falls on the roof, and then it's kind of almost like this is somewhat of like a translucent view that you're getting here, because these ovals, that's showing like the pump itself,
Right.
and
Gotcha.
then this is like the outline of the canopy.
The ARB got a separate drawing from you that was the lighting plan that showed proof in our ordinance that there wouldn't be bright light cast beyond the property line. I'm having trouble matching that up as I remember it to what's shown on the drawings. How do we see where the outdoor light fixtures are on this plan?
So the outdoor light fixtures are represented by these little boxes that are slightly darker than all the crosses around them. And so that's where you can tell where the light fixtures are. And then, also if they're not kind of like immediately standing out, they're slightly more bold, but if they're not immediately standing out, where the light, where this number is the highest, that's where the light is the brightest and most concentrated. And so, when you get to an 8 or an 8.3, you're probably pretty close to a light fixture.
I'm sorry, Planning Commission doesn't have this page right now. ARB got that at their last meeting for, oh, really?
C7 last one.
Wow. Cool, thank you. Or like us this afternoon. Great.
And then this line around is basically the 1/2 foot candle line.
That's the standard in our ordinance, and ARB had some discussion time on that, was satisfied with this.
What was the term she used?
A foot candle, how much light does some ancient candle, how much light does it make when you're a foot away from it?
Okay.
That was a really good way of explaining it. It's like an archaic term.
Well, one thing that's made it very much easier for me to be on this commission is that he's very good at explaining things.
Yeah. So I guess just kind of like hopping back into a few additional things on the grading plan. All these numbers that are around are spot elevations. So that's the proposed grade in a particular point. And that's really helpful out in the field for the contractor to be able to put those points into their GPS system so that they can grade the site properly. And the arrows, that's showing the slope in certain locations. And so a maximum slope in a parking lot is 5% typically. So we're less than that 5%, and typically, especially at a gas station user, when you want it to be around 2% is ideal in a lot of places. So we have 1.5% up to 3.5% when we're kind of wanting all the water to drain into this inlet here to tie into our stormwater system. On the grading plan, the dark lines are the proposed grading, and then the dashed is the existing. And where they touch is is how we're tying in a particular location to the existing grade.
So when I see a bold number 22 and a gray number 26 underneath it, does that mean that 4 feet is cut away?
See a bold number 22. The way you're describing it, yes. So like for example, so this is the 420. This is the existing 420 contour. This is the proposed 420 grade. So we are bringing up this corner here in this plan. So this is, 420, this contour is 418, 416. So this is 418, but this is actually going to be, 420, 421 in this area after we, put in the curb and everything and have that pavement a little higher. So we're raising up this corner here. But other than that, it's a relatively flat site to begin with, especially for Scottsville and Albemarle County. And I think the last sheet, other than the lighting plan, is our landscape plan. And we've been talking about this in detail with the ARB, but we have our screening back here adjacent to residential property, and tried to propose a nice mix of screening shrubs, evergreen trees, and deciduous trees along the entrance corridor, Route 20, and then provided the required planting along existing road frontage here with the required screening around parking areas with these evergreen shrubs. I think that's probably all that I have for you, unless you had any specific questions.
I can't read. Are you working with the ARB to make the plantings native plantings? Is that something you guys are doing? I'm having trouble reading that little box.
Yeah, sure. So yes, and that's Matt already caught something.
Okay.
We had in our first plan, we had a non-native dogwood species, which typically grows pretty well around here, but we also know that native plants are incredibly, important and important to Scottsville, especially. So we swapped that out for a native dogwood.
Great.
And that was pretty much the only one. With evergreen trees, it's a little tricky to find something that's a good screening tree and native to Virginia. Doesn't typically. I don't know if there's a good option out there for us. So the evergreen trees are might be considered non-native to the area, but that's pretty much it.
That Thuja species at the bottom of the list is one that Aaron Root specifically recommended on another project, and ARB was happy with this list as presented. The main thing that ARB was debating last Thursday about this whole plan was how many of the existing large trees to preserve. This plan only shows preserving about 5 large existing trees, a couple of oaks and hickories and cherries. ARB feels that's really important to try to do better. So we're gonna walk the site together with the applicant and try to tag some more trees that we can keep.
Great, thank you.
Well, and perhaps plan for a couple more in other places, like along the side or the back, because who knows what's going to happen with those trees where VDOT has the right of way. Right. And we know that trees are important. But where does it say that only 5 are being maintained? Because the landscape plan is showing 14 of them. How did you know? I assume that's what was going to stay.
So that is something that we will submit with a revised plan after we go out and do the site walk with the ARB. It was something that we talked about extensively at the meeting last week, and about which ones could be preserved. It's not something that was presented in the plan that we submitted to the town and that we submitted to the ARB.
Okay.
It's something that we're going back and saying, okay, well, are there any trees that we can incorporate into the site, and if so, where are they and what are they?
All right, very good, thank you.
I don't see the heights of the buildings labeled. Where is that?
So that is on the cover page. We should have proposed height. So we just have the maximum building height listed, but we can also list the proposed height as well on there.
I want to know what you guys are going to name the sandwiches.
What's your input? We need some Scottsville input on the Scottsville sandwiches.
I've never heard of renaming the market's signature sandwiches. Never heard of that.
We've got to add a new one, the horseshoe
Okay.
bend or something
Let's
like
do
that.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. And if there are, so Matt, do you have enough hard copies for everyone? And then I need to send out this PDF so that everybody can have a digital copy.
Yes, the table here is set with copies for everyone, so please stop by at your convenience and we'll set you out with those.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I'll just put this PDF on the email chain with the agenda on it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
You too, Kelsey. Thanks.
Just out of curiosity, how much pavement, or, I mean, is pavement the threshold or the determining factor in how to manage stormwater?
A lot of it, that's the math of how much water are you managing, that it can't go through the pavement.
Right.
So the more pavement you have, the bigger bucket you need at the bottom corner to deal with it. So a Walmart worth of parking lot is a major challenge to manage the water. So there's a label on the front, 5,000 square feet, I think it was, of pavement area.
Well, 62,000.
Proposed 60,000 square feet of pavement. Half the site.
What's what kind of like environmentally friendly things are they pitching?
Solar panels on top of all of the gas station canopies. In the future, electric vehicle charging. Recycling some of the water that goes through the car wash, so that not all of it goes into the sewer, not all of it goes into that pond. Some of it is stored within the tanks there and reused in the car wash. The solar panels on the roof of the canopy is the big feature. And the business owner talked with ARB a little bit about the importance of having a flat canopy roof to provide the ideal mounting for the solar panels, that having a peaked sort of house looking roof on there means that the north side can't have good solar panels on it. So he wants a flat roof so that he can mount all across the top of it. Stormwater impact of 1.5 acres of pavement is significant.
Yeah, and it's not really being mitigated, it's just being retained, so.
Yeah, you trap that water and let it gradually flow through so it's not hitting the creek all at once. But Some of the better practices might be pervious pavement. You could ask about that. So that water doesn't run off in the sheet, but rather flows through the pavement.
I guess my only concern is there's some potential, hazards with cleaning products or
Yeah.
gasoline. And
Right. Mhm.
I have to say, one of my pet peeves is when you go into a parking lot and there's just not enough room to maneuver around. So I really want to look at that.
The owner spoke to ARB a little bit about the basis of the design. One of ARB's questions was, why do the gas pumps have to be in the front? Can't the nice looking building with the little cupola and the windows and the market, can't that be the first thing that we see? And then maybe put the gas pumps behind it? And the owner spoke to a couple of pieces of the design logic on that. Part of it is safety and security, that the staff in the middle of the building kind of needs to be in the middle so that the staff can easily look around and see their whole premises. And most importantly, the 18-wheeler fuel truck needs to be able to make a complete loop around the site and drive through. You don't want the delivery truck to have to do a backing maneuver or a K-turn loaded with fuel in a crowded spot. So the basic layout of why is the site as big as it is and why is it shaped basically the way it is so that the 18-wheeler can come in and make a lap around the premises to unload and exit after the fuel delivery.
So that's going to go through here.
Yep.
And then
All the way
around
around.
back
Yes.
behind the canopies
And then
and
exit.
the gas. Okay,
Yes. And so that's kind of,
that's kind of tight though.
it's tight, but it works. And that's sort of the deal breaker for why is it designed the way it is.
Right.
They already was satisfied with that.
Yeah.
Just an example. The market at Avon Street is not quite big enough, not shaped quite the right way to achieve that. The truck has to come in and then back up and then turn again to do its unloading maneuver. And they've actually had accidents from that. So they really want something a little bit bigger on the site.
Yeah, I can't visualize how a truck would really maneuver their success easily.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny. Okay, so what are you looking for from us tonight? Approval on this?
Yeah, this is perfectly fine for a first reading. Like Michelin said, you'll see written input from VDOT and from the Albemarle County Stormwater Office here in the next couple of months with their input on this. It has to go around to a couple of other agencies as well. So what you have here is the first reading of the preliminary plan. This may take a couple of months to work out all of those kinks, not least as ARB finishing its tree work. So we'll have an approval vote of a preliminary plan and eventually a final site plan. Planning Commission could have the last word on this. It doesn't need to go to town council. If everyone is happy with the plan review, Planning Commission can approve it and it can go to building permits. If there's any dispute, if Planning Commission isn't satisfied with the plan, or if there are other complaints, town council will rule on any appeals of the content. But on a routine site plan, we move through this checklist, it's satisfactory, we get the agency input, staff and planning commission approve it, and then they can go to construction. But that may take 3 more months.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Should we talk a little bit about Airbnbs?
Yes.
Table that.
Do you guys have some room left on your mental table for Airbnb discussion?
I kind of wanted to say do it another time, but personally, but that's just like.
All right, how about we table that for next meeting?
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. So I saw that the Airbnb on Main Street was voted down by town council. I was just wondering what the rationale was behind that.
I can speak to that. I actually voted for it. I was surprised. I thought that a Airbnb would have the opportunity to determine their own business future, but I was wrong. I think that other town councilors ultimately want more fleshed out understanding of what we're going to do. There's a concern that we would lose some of the housing stock of the town. For my part, I don't think it's our role to do that, but they did. And that was also a reason I think we will want to make a recommendation to them about what to do. But I was surprised. I mean, it was resoundingly defeated. I think I was the only one who voted for it.
Yeah, I was just wondering why, why we approved Miss Greer's and not that one. So.
Well, we did, I mean, I was surprised. I think, to be fair to the other town councilors, it would be that they are looking for more direction as a town ourselves, and we really haven't thought it all through yet in terms of it. We're seeing more of them. Again, for my part, I didn't think that was accurate, but that's what they thought.
Okay.
I shouldn't say I didn't think it was accurate. I thought it was premature. I think it's a real issue. I do think we have to define it, but I still think we could have allowed that to happen. And to me, I don't like to do things that stop a business.
Right. Yeah, and we lose that revenue.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and so I hope, as far as the discussion for next month goes, that we'll be able to, I really would like to know, does the town have any teeth as far as if we are saying to homeowners, you can't turn your property into an Airbnb, and they go ahead and do it anyway. We lose the revenue, they do it anyway. What is the legal recourse? Do we have any legal recourse? So we don't have to talk about it now. It's just one of my big questions.
Well said.
Well, I was surprised at how many we have in town in the first place. Were we talking about that last month?
Right, yeah, and
It was quite a big number.
right. And I'd like to know, like, out of those property owners, are they all legitimate as far as, are they paying business taxes to the town of
Yeah.
Scottsville or not? And
My guess is maybe not.
right. So I don't know.
We'll see.
I'm very interested in this discussion.
The short answer is most are licensed and in good standing, but not all
How does
Okay.
one obtain a license?
of them. We do business licenses and we do quarterly transient occupancy tax payments.
So I think the major platforms collect those taxes and I assume disperse them to the town, assuming they're going through a major platform.
I think there was a recent change in the law that made that easier to do. In the past, no, where Airbnb did not guarantee that it was going to read thousands of people's tax ordinances and pay all the right people. So they just put a disclaimer on it and said, settle up with your local boss about your taxes. I think they're getting better about looking that up and admitting it. We started getting those.
Okay.
But I
Do
still need to
they
check.
break it down for you to let you know who the taxpayer was?
We got one where the issue is figuring out who the taxpayer is. So
That's not an
no,
easy
no,
undertaking.
So I think we still need to sort some of that out. with the
Yeah.
county And maybe with our local business owners as well.
Okay, all right, so this is a big topic. Okay.
We'll keep working on that.
Well,
Mm.
we're anxious to hear, but I think we're going to put it off for tonight. Thanks for putting it together, but we want to see you back here next month.
Excellent.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to second your motion.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn this meeting for this evening.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you so much. We had a fast-paced, dense meeting tonight. We got a lot accomplished and you guys had some brilliant questions and insights. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa.
Y'all have a nice evening.
All right.
You too.
Have fun storming the castle.
Storming the castle.